All right, Big Bang. Today is Thursday. It's October 28th. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. Joined by a frequent guest at this point. We're on Zoom. It's me. It's the Vindog. Vindog, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
We're doing good. It's always good to hear from you. You got, we've talked about the ice cream truck story. We talked about some plumbing stories. We had you on for the draft. So it's always good when you hit me up and you're like, hey, Eddie, I got something I got to talk about. Can I talk about it? And as always, I say, of course. The people love to hear it, Vince. So thanks for reaching out.
Oh, no problem. Love it. Love being on your show.
Yeah, of course. I love it too. And today actually is kind of in the theme of, the month, the theme of the weekend, really. It's a Halloween kind of spooky kind of story, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
So before we get into it, though, I want to talk about Roman Vindog. It's a shame this stuff, wasn't really around back in the heyday, right, Vindog? Have you heard about these things yet, the Roman swipes?
No.
You're
talking about the swipes?
Yeah, the swipes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've heard about those.
So the swipes, they're, everyone has tried different ways to last longer in bed. Whether it's counting backwards from 10, thinking about chores later in the day. Well, these swipes, Vindog. They're clinically proven as a way to help you out. It's great.
Well, I'll tell you, when I get to bed these days, all I want to do is sleep. Can it help me sleep?
I don't know if it can help you sleep, but
it's going to keep me up.
Yeah, exactly. It's going
in more ways than one. I get that.
Yeah. So,
all right.
The Roman swipes are effective, easy to use, and they're fast acting. They don't require a prescription. Roman can ship swipes to you in discreet, unmarked packaging. And each swipe packet is small enough to hide in your wallet for whenever you need it. They're super easy to use. Just take the swipe out of the packet, swipe it out, let it dry. You're good to go. That's it. Go to GetRoman.com/walk. You can get your first month of swipes for just $5 when you choose a monthly plan. That's GetRoman.com/walk. Go get your swipes, people. Start making things better in the bedroom. All right, Vindog. What spooky story?
I'm sure that works in the living room too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Of course. Of
Anywhere.
course. The living room, the bathroom, you name it. The swipes will be there for clinically proven.
Yeah.
So what's the spooky story? You got a little haunted house situation?
When I was a kid, I was 13 years old. My father got a job in Norwich, Connecticut, working for a clothing company. Good job. So he decided, I'll move to Connecticut right away. I'm going to stop my job. I'll live in a hotel for a while, and I'll find us a house. So my father's originally from Hull, Massachusetts. A lot of water. So he grew up as a kid with the ocean right outside his doorstep. And, he had his first boat before he had his first car, and he went fishing, and he was really into that whole thing. And then, of course, once he had kids, he was landlocked. He lived in a neighborhood, no water nearby, except maybe a lake. And when he moved to Connecticut, he wanted to be near the water. So he found a house in New London, Connecticut. It was on Pequot Avenue, on the water side of Pequot Avenue, which overlooks the Thames River. The Thames River, it's like an ocean. And right across from it is the Groton sub base, where all the submarines are. So he was so in love with this house. So the house was built, 1928. We moved in 1969. So it was like 41 years old. So it was old, but it wasn't that old. When you walked in the front door, there was a mudroom, and you were ground level. But as you got to the rear of the house, you went through a galley kitchen, a dining room, a living room, and you got to the back, you were now second floor. There was a walkout basement. In the walkout basement, there were 4 kids from Mitchell College, which is right across the street on the water side. And they rented the downstairs. So there was a big seawall around the whole backyard, concrete, because of the ocean. There was a dock. It was right there. To the left of our house, when you look at the house, there were smaller homes pretty close by. Everything was kind of close. And to the right, there was a beach, sandy beach. Not a great beach, but it was a beach. And next to that was an aged yacht club. It really needs some work. But all in all, my father loved it because he had a view of the Thames, which was incredible. There was a big picture window at the end of the first floor looking out over the Thames. And then there was an equal-sized one on the right side of the living room that you could look out and see the water, the beach, the yacht club, and get a look at what was coming down the Thames. And, he just loved it. And people, would come just to look out those picture windows. My mother was living in Sharon with me and my grandmother. And then she moved down 3 or 4 months after my father did. and she moved into that house. I stayed in Sharon, finished up Pop Warner football. That was really the main reason I stayed. My father didn't want me to, leave the team in the middle of the season. We were undefeated. We won a championship. It was a good thing. So my mother moved in, and all of a sudden there was a knock at the door. And this small woman dressed in black with a black veil over her face, and she looked like a mourner, and she knocked on the door and said to my mother, I used to live in this house. Would you mind if I come in and just take a look? So my parents were trusting. They said, sure, come on in. So the lady walked through the galley kitchen, through the dining room, through the living room, right to the picture window at the back of the house. She stared out at the Thames River for a minute, and then she looked at my mother and father and said, when we lived here, my husband had a small boat tied to the dock he used for fishing. And one day he went out in the boat, never came back. Coast Guard went looking for him, never found him or the boat. So my parents were like shocked. Then the woman just looked at him and at my parents and said, this house is an unhappy house. And she turned around, she walked to the front door and left. So that was the first time they really got an inkling that there's some stuff going on in this house.
Whoa.
And then after the football season was over, I went to a final game in Farmingdale, Long Island. We did a game with some people that we knew, and we stayed at their houses. It was kind of fun. I went right from there to this house in Connecticut. And I was very happy to get there because I was living with my grandmother from my mother's side and my grandmother and grandfather from my father's side. And I was sleeping on a folding couch, not a pull-out couch, but one that hinged in the middle and you could collapse it.
Yeah.
But no matter where you slept, there was always that big crease.
Yeah.
It was a horrible thing. So I thought, I'm going to move to Connecticut. I'm going to get back in my bed because my furniture was there. So when I arrived, I went upstairs into this house. It was the second floor. And the second floor was weird. It had a door on it that looked like any closet door. Then when you opened it, there was a set of stairs, went up to a landing, then turned left, and there was the whole second floor. So my bedroom was right at the top of the landing. And I went in there, and there's my furniture, and I'm thinking, great, I'm going to be sleeping on my bed. And back in those days, parents would, they'd get encyclopedias, and they'd buy you a little desk for your room so you could do your homework. Nowadays, we never did that. Everybody does their homework at the kitchen table, But back then, you had a little desk. I went up there, there's my little desk, and there's my furniture, and I'm excited. And my mother and father go, well, you're not going to move up there just yet. Really? Why? Well, why don't you stay downstairs in the den? So I go down in the den. What's there? Another couch, hinged, folding. And there I am. I'm sleeping on a hinged couch again, right in the middle of the crease. So we're living there for a while. I'm going to school in Norwich, Connecticut with my father. He drives me in every morning from New London. And I'm at Kelly Junior High School in Norwich, Connecticut. And then, all of a sudden, we started to notice that in the morning when we woke up, the door led to the upstairs, the one that was leading to the upstairs, was open. And then we go upstairs and we noticed that at the end of the hallway, there was a room that overlooked the Thames River. It was a very small room with 2 double hung windows in it. And you got a beautiful view, of the Thames River. And that door would be shut. So it was kind of weird that the one downstairs is open, that door is shut. So it happened every single night, to a point where we started to joke that we had a ghost. And then my father put a hasp on it with a padlock, locked it. Next morning, we were all eager to wake up and see what was going on. The door was open. The padlock was on the floor. We walked upstairs. The door at the end of the hallway was shut. So we knew something was going on, but we wanted to kind of avoid it. So my mother called up the previous owners, who only owned the house for a very short time, and she said to him, did anything weird happen in that house? And they both looked at each other and they said, they walked by at one point, but over the phone, they said to my mother, weird things were happening, and then they hung up. So strange things have been happening in that house. So we stayed there for a while. And like I said, I used to go into Norwich every day with my father, Kelly Junior High. And then when I got out of school, I would take the bus to downtown Norwich to the YMCA. And I used to play basketball after school, stop midway and go to a diner for supper. And my father used to play paddleball, so he'd go there some nights with his friends. So I stayed there right up till like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. Other nights I'd come home at like 6 o'clock. So, one night we came home late. It was after 10. It was snowing, and my mother was home alone. And she's sitting in the galley kitchen by herself. All the lights in the house were on. Now, she didn't tell me anything. I'm 13 years old. She probably figured I would have freaked out and I wouldn't want to sleep in the house, you know.
Oh,
But
yeah.
she told my father that she was sitting in the back in one of the captain's chairs, looking out over the Thames River in the side window. You could see the beach, the yacht club, the river, and it was a beautiful sight. And all of a sudden, this white figure jumped out of the woodwork of the house. It was dancing over the water 15 feet in the air. And my mother was looking at it. It scared the shit out of her. She said it had short little stubby arms in the shape of a head, and it was dancing and kept turning and looking towards her. She ran in the kitchen. She just sat there until we got home. Told my father. My father's like, well, you know, it's winter, it's snowing, there's a mist coming off the water. It wasn't a ghost. Please don't tell your son that you saw a ghost. It's nothing. It's forget about it. So we tried to forget about it. Meanwhile, the door was opening, the other door shutting. Strange things are happening in the house. And we're trying to just, you know, accept what's going on as being weird and not like supernatural. So then I went back to Sharon to visit my friends, and my sister drove her car up to stay a weekend in London. And she had heard about these beautiful views. She was a senior in high school. She brought one of her friends with her, and they camped out in the living room, and they were watching submarines. Now, when you're in this house and it's pitch black out, and submarines are coming in and out of the Thames River, the lights are on the subs. I mean, it's beautiful. And when a big freight liner comes through there and there's a tugboat pushing it, all you see is the lights. I mean, it was incredible views. House with a view. So she's sitting there and she's looking out the window, taking in all these views. Her friend falls asleep. And my sister's looking out the window. All of a sudden, this white shape jumps out of the woodwork. And as she described it to my mother and father, who were in bed, with little stubby arms and a round shape of a head, and it kept looking at her. So my mother looked at my father and said, you see, there's something in that house. And my father's like, no, he says to my sister, just go back to bed. Go to sleep. So my sister goes in the other room. No, she's not willing to go to sleep. She keeps looking out the window, and there's the object. And it draws closer to the house, according to her. Disappears. She doesn't see it. She's looking out to see if she can find this object. Suddenly she hears a noise behind her. She turns around. She watches the handle to the door leading to the upstairs turn. The door opens, and she's just in amazement. And she's listening, and all of a sudden, poof, the door slams shut at the end of the hallway. Next day, she tells my mother and father what she saw. My mother looks at my father and says, we're moving out of this house. You know, we had to find another house. My father went looking for a house in Norwich. And in the meantime, my mother would come home from shopping, from errands, and she would ring the doorbell first because it scared the shit out of her, you know, seeing that ghost. So we move out. We move to the next town over. The house is up for sale. It's not selling. Suddenly, a very wealthy man decides he wants to buy it as a second house. So he arranges to meet with my father with his wife. His wife shows up. Boom, my father looks. He couldn't believe it. He's in Connecticut, but this is a woman he went to high school with at Roxbury Memorial in Massachusetts, you know. And they're talking, they're reminiscing. The guy said, I love the house. I'll take it. Didn't dicker with the price. Gave him a $10,000 deposit. And he was happy, my father, because he had the mortgage on that house, the mortgage on the house in Norwich. He was helping pay the house in Sharon that the grandparents lived in. So he was getting rid of this burden. All of a sudden, a few weeks later, guy calls up. He goes, I got some bad news. You know, my wife has suffered a severe nervous breakdown, and she's institutionalized right now, and I'm not sure she'll ever, you know, come out. I can't buy this house. My father's like, oh my God, you know. The guy says, don't worry. You can keep the $10,000 deposit. This is 1970. So I mean, $10,000 was a lot of money. Yeah. So we kept the house and we tried to sell it. In the meantime, the basement flooded. The kids from Mitchell College had to evacuate. They looked for reasons why there was water in there. They couldn't detect why there was water. I kept thinking, you know, at that point, we knew there was a ghost in the house. I did too. We thought, well, maybe the ghost doesn't want us to leave or sell the house. It's just weird. So eventually, the house sold. Now I'm going to school at Norwich Free Academy. high school. And my English teacher freshman year was Mr. Sowers, real cool guy. Loved him. He used to explain things to us and give us a chance to write creatively. He was good. He brings in this newspaper article about a house on Pequot Avenue that was declared a ghost house, number 347. So I'm thinking, wow, ours was number 325. I think it was 347. Maybe it was an even number. It must have been 346. And I knew it was close by our house. And apparently what happened there was there was a husband and wife and a 4-year-old kid. And the husband was a submarine captain. And he would go out for 3-4 months at a time. And, while he was gone, the mother was finding, the young boy up in the attic. And when the father got home, they're like, how are you getting up into the attic? There's a little kid. And he's like, a one-armed sea captain is bringing me up there. And every time they found him up there in the middle of the night, he said the same thing. A one-armed sea captain was bringing me up there. So things were happening in that house. Chandeliers were swinging, no wind, no nothing. They were just moving. Pictures were falling off the wall. There was a cat they found dead on their front stairs, no reason. And they knew something was going on. So they called some experts in there to find out what was happening. And they determined that the original owner of the house was a one-armed sea captain and that he had died at sea. And what they thought was, when he died, he stayed in that house, his spirit did, to protect his wife. And even after his wife died, he stayed in that house to protect the woman of the house. So he really wasn't dangerous. He was protecting the woman. So whenever the submarine captain went out, the one-armed sea captain would come into the house to protect the woman and her child who was there too. So it's like, wow, I just couldn't believe it. So me and my mother took a ride back to see where the house was. It was diagonally across the street from us, And I'm like, wow, it's right there. And we started thinking, we just bet that ghost, when the husband came home and they were safe, he would go across the street into our house, go up the stairs, go to that room at the end that had the best view of the Thames River and just hang out in there. And it was like, my father and I never saw the ghost, only my sister and my mother. So that kind of falls in line with he was there to protect women. And that's pretty much the story of the one-armed sea captain.
Wow. So the lady in the black veil, the lady in the black dress, do you think that was a ghost too?
No, I think she was real. And I think, her story was real, that, her husband had gone out in the boat and never returned. I can't see anybody making that story up.
Yeah.
She came in and she was in her 60s.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She was dressed, women like that, lost her husband. She probably dressed in black for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
And she just wanted to walk through that house. I've gone back to houses that I used to live in, and it's fun walking through them.
Yeah.
So she just wanted to walk through it. And then she comes up with that statement, this house is an unhappy house. And then the people admitted they left because weird things were happening. Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden my mother sees a ghost. My father says, no, it's the mist. You're crazy. Don't worry about it. Then my sister, not knowing my mother's story, comes up with the same story. Yeah. Stubby arms, round head, dancing over the water. And then she goes one step further, sees the handle turn, the door open, and hears the door shut upstairs. So then we're out and bring the story home to my father, who doesn't believe anything like that. Mm-hmm. So he decides we're going to take a boat ride from Norwich down the Thames River. And I didn't want to do it. I'm like, I don't want to go back to that house, especially in the ocean, in the water.
Yeah.
So I get in the boat with my father, because I was the guy who helped him get the boat off the trailer and load the boat on the trailer. And me and him were out in the boat, and we're driving, and there we are. We're in the backyard of the house. And he puts the engine in neutral. The waves kind of cover the sides of the boat, the front of the boat. And then he shuts it off, and we just kind of cruise. And I'm looking at the house, and I'm looking right up at those double hung windows up on the top floor. And I knew that ghost was in there, and he was looking at us, And I was never so happy when my father started up that boat and we turned around and headed back to Norwich, man. It's like, I went back there one other time. I was in high school, or actually after high school, a year after high school. And a friend of mine went to Mitchell College. Mm-hmm. And it was his birthday. Me and my buddy Pete decided we'd surprise him, and give him a hard time. So we got there. He had a girlfriend. He was in the room, locked in a room with her. We're pounding on the door. Hey, Danny, let us in. Me and my buddy Pete. And they didn't. And, we ended up just having a big party with the kids that were there. It was like 2:30, 3 in the morning. I was driving. I said, hey, we're going back to that house. It was right down the street. I drove down there. I parked the car. I jumped out and I'm yelling, come on, Ghost, get out of there. I want to see you. I want to talk to you. I want, and I'm yelling at the top of my lungs. Nothing happened. And, I went on recently when I wrote the blog last year for this. Mm-hmm. And, the house has been completely remodeled. Someone bought it and, they made it a gorgeous, gorgeous house. But the same thing is true. It's got the big glass in the living room looking out at the water and the side. The yacht club is gone. That whole beach has been redone. The whole area has kind of changed. But I always wondered if the people who bought it from my father experienced anything while they were in the house, because I think they had to. They had to.
I wonder, and that's where, who knows? I mean, you said the address. I mean, this is where, like, you always wonder the reach of Barstool. That'd be crazy if someone could connect this and see if they...
Well, I published a blog last year, and I had pictures of the house as it is today, and I gave the address. Mm-hmm. I actually published it in a magazine, a small one, in Connecticut, during Halloween. So I think people are more apt to read it during Halloween, but less apt to believe it.
Yeah,
I think it's just a spooky story,
but
it's not. It actually happened. And a lot of people are skeptics, like, no, I don't believe in ghosts. But you tell them the story and they cringe. And it's like, if you're scared while I tell you the story, guess what? You believe. Otherwise, it wouldn't affect you.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't believe it until someone or you experience it yourself. And then like, hey, wait a minute. There is some supernatural shit going on in this world. And now, since then, I mean, how many shows on television have ghosts that talk to people? A lot.
Yeah.
So I believe it. I became kind of a ghost whisperer of sorts, because people would hear my stories and just assume that I could help them out. So if they ever had any experiences or any questions, they would contact me. And I never saw the ghost. I just lived in the house, and my mother saw it, my sister saw it, and I know the story's true because of what happened across the street. And but I would help people out, and there were other people that had legitimate ghosts in their house, and I did visit some of those homes, and it's kind of weird. It's out there. You buy an old house, there's history, and even if you don't buy an old house, it's property.
Yeah,
people die on their property.
And honestly, it might apply to just women and children, because if that 3-year-old saw it, right? Like that's
4-year-old, yeah,
4-year-old, yes. I mean that's
that's true. Because he was there to protect.
Yeah.
He was there to protect.
Now, are you someone who, like, how long have you lived in your house now?
My house is a funny situation too. I lived in my house 34 years, and me and my wife were living in an apartment with our dog, a puppy. And I came here and I worked here for a month myself to get it ready. Floors, walls, boom, boom, bang. We did the bathroom, new countertop, and we get it all set up. And while I was here, I started hearing footsteps up in the attic. And I've talked to enough ghost people that when ghosts hang out in the house, they usually go up in the attic, and that's where they hang out. So I started hearing footsteps, and I kept thinking, I got too much work to do. I'm not going ghost hunting right now, So I knew there's something going on there. And then some of the neighbors started talking to me because I mowed the lawn. That lawn hadn't been mowed in years, and the house was looking better. And they started talking to me, and I said, yeah, I bought the house from so-and-so. And they said, yeah, years ago, when these people first moved in, right around Christmas, there was a pool next door, above ground, and 2 little boys wandered over there. And one of them got up inside the pool and was standing on the ice, and the ice collapsed, and he went under. The other brother runs home. By the time the ambulance, the fire department showed up, it's too late. The kid had drowned, and he passed away. So when I was here, I started thinking, wow, my experience with ghosts, I hear footsteps upstairs. I guarantee this kid is here. And then as years went on, I had a TV downstairs. In the middle of the night, the TV would come on, and I'd get downstairs, see what's going on, and it would come on to Nickelodeon. So the kid drowned when he was like 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah. So
that's what he'd want to watch on TV. And I would sit there and I felt bad. I didn't want to shut the TV, but I had to shut the TV. and we had to sleep. So I'd sit there. I knew that my ghost mind would tell me this kid is here. He's in the house. And we ended up having 3 boys, and he had 3 brothers. So it was probably a good place for him to hang out because there were boys there. And he hung out here for a long time. I don't think he's here anymore. I've been through the entire house. The noise in the attic's gone. The TVs don't go on by themselves. But honestly, I'm not afraid anymore of ghosts. Most people are scared shit of ghosts. When I hear a story or they think there's a ghost in the house, I'm not afraid. I've had too many run-ins with spirits and ghosts to be intimidated by it. I'm intrigued by it.
Yeah. That was gonna be my question. Are you like intrigued by the supernatural? Like, have you ever like pursued that further, or you just kind of have your 2 stories?
Well, I got more than 2, but I got a bunch of stories. But I did publish a blog last year, early in the year, about the time I had a seance and met and talked to Babe Ruth. Yeah, that's a true story. People used to seek me out for seances back in the day. There weren't any computers. People were bored. You could drink as much Budweiser as you could hold, but you wanted more. So everybody wanted to do seances. Hey, Vin, let's do a seance. Okay, my buddy Ken knows how to do it. Me and Ken would sit there and we make our own Ouija board, not the store-bought ones, and we flip a wine glass over, wax the table. You hold your index finger on. And there's a spirit in the room, please indicate so by going to the letter yes, because there's a yes and a no, 0 through 9, and A through Z. And, you could sit there for a half hour, nothing would happen. You're getting tired, you're getting bored. Then all of a sudden, vroom, the thing would start to move. Yes, there's a spirit in the room. Are you related to anybody in the room? Yes. What are the initials of this person? You go right to the initials and tell you who in the room was related to this person. My own grandfather appeared first at one of the seances. Then we got to Babe Ruth. And we asked him, we said, hey, is it true you used to eat hot dogs and drink beer in the dugout? He said, yeah. And we said, when you called your shot and you pointed, did you really point? Because there's controversy whether you did or not. And he said that he did, that he pointed for that shot. Okay, I'll accept that. So we started messing around, and the last spirit we got a spirit, and they get tired. So they tell you when they're tired, they're going to leave, get us in someone else. And all of a sudden, we go, spirit, do you know anybody in the room? Yeah. He went to PC, the initials of my friend Peter. And Peter was a great baseball player, 5'6", Freddie Potok, very small guy. But he could throw, he could hit. He was an outfielder and a pitcher in Little League, and I caught him. And his mother was a Christian Scientist, and she went to every game sick. And we used to say to her, go to the doctor. And she said, no, God will heal me. And that's what they believe. You don't have to go see a doctor. And God will heal me. So she ended up passing away. And Peter tried out for the Royals. And I think he was like 93 out of 350 guys trying out for that team. He was a good baseball player. So here we are sitting there, and okay, his initial comes up. We're all drunk. We all sober up really quick. And he goes, what message do you have for me? And we, 3 of us had our fingers on there, and it went PLAYBASEBALL. Play baseball. She wanted him to play baseball. And at that moment, it got very real for everybody in the room because we knew her. And, if you don't believe in this stuff, you're going to laugh, you're going to yuck, you're going to say, oh, Vindog is crazy, man. He probably did too much peyote buttons when he was younger. Maybe, but you know what? No, this stuff all happened. It's all real. It's all documented. And, it's stuff that happens all the time. My buddy Donnie was so, overwhelmed by seances. He called me every weekend, come to my house. He was like 4 or 5 years older than me. Let's have a seance. And I'd bring my buddy Kenny, and we'd have seances up at his house. And every week he called me back, let's do another one. And he went down to Salem, and he met some witches down there. And he told them what we were doing. And they said, don't do it. Here's what's happening. When you put your finger on the glass, upside down on the bottom of it, the spirit isn't in the glass. It's in one of the people who has their hands on the glass. That person is moving the glass, but they don't realize it. And if that spirit doesn't want to leave that person's body, it doesn't have to. You're messing with fire. We all got scared. We're like, we ain't doing any more seances. No way. I like that Babe Ruth swing, no doubt, but the rest of that, no way. I'm not doing that. But, at this Halloween time, and, people are more apt to listen to some of these stories, but they also think that they're not true. This is a true story. All the stories I've told you today, Eddie, they're all true. This is all stuff
because your recollection of them like is like, because you remember specific details to shit like that when it happens. But obviously, like, people here at the end, like Babe Ruth and everything, they're going to be like, what is Vindog talking about? But your recollection is crazy.
Yeah, well, things like that you don't forget.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I'm like,
I wrote the blog, and it was nice writing the blog. My mother's still alive, so I was talking to her during the whole time, making sure I get everything right. And it was nice to be able to write it up and, in order as the way it happened. And I sent it to her, and, we went over it, and, and she was there. She lived it. And she said, it's all true. Everything in there that you're writing is exactly what happened. So, I mean, the blog is going to republish this weekend.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a good read. I think a year ago, not a lot of people read my blog as much as they are now.
Yeah.
So it's a really good story. It's fun to read.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that, we tell the story here, and maybe someone will go on the blog and read the full story, start to finish.
Well, this will be good too, Vin, because you could put the YouTube link in there as well. So if people would rather watch and listen, they could do that. And then if they want to read, they could read. That works too, right? So
yeah, I'm going to do that. Absolutely. Yeah. But I mean, have you ever had experiences in your life? Or?
You know what? I have not. And I've always been someone who's interested in it. And, I've done the thing with, a couple friends where we did some dumb things, and there's like a haunted cemetery here that's in the middle of the woods, actually, on the south side of Chicago, called Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. And I've done that whole kind of thing a lot, and mainly during the day. I was too much of a chicken shit, to be honest with you. But
I think every town has that. It has a cemetery where there's like some kind of history that there's something going on there, and everybody's afraid to go through it.
Yeah.
When we were kids, we drank a lot of beer.
Yeah.
And we got guts. And we used to drive through that cemetery in convertibles with the tops down, swearing and yelling. And the guy's name was Charlie Norton. It was over in Canton, Massachusetts. And the legend was that, if you pissed on his grave, you'd have a miserable life. And everybody was going over there to piss on Charlie Norton's grave. And people that did it had some pretty bad luck. One of my friend's brothers in particular was in an automobile accident. Then he got healthy and something else happened to him. And people said to him, it's because you pissed on Charlie Norton's grave. The only thing you can do now is go back there every day for a week and leave flowers on it. And maybe, the bad karma will go. Yeah. And he did it. And he claims that after that, he was fine. And that was in my town, just like your town.
Yeah, man.
People would have this legend of the cemetery that was close by. And, we had an opportunity once to buy a house that was next to a cemetery. And I told my wife, I definitely want to buy it. It's the perfect place to live. Your neighbors can't fuck with you. They're all dead,
That's
and my
true.
wife's like, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. I said, I would do it in a heartbeat. It was a nice house, going cheap, next to a cemetery. Of course, you got to listen to all the funerals going through there.
But that's the scary part to me, Vindog, is, that and, by the woods, like the cults, like, you know what I mean? The people who get a little too weird with it, like it's one thing doing a Ouija board with your buddies in a basement, drinking a couple beers. It's another thing when they go out there and smear deer blood all over their face,
Well, that's scary stuff.
Yeah, that's what I don't want anything to do with. That's what scares me. Yes.
I don't like that.
No.
I'm not that guy. I mean, to me, it's always been real, but kind of novelty,
Yeah.
I mean, I do believe it. I believe it.
Yeah.
There was a time when I first started getting involved in the seances, and I'd be driving home from one myself in my car, and I'd be sitting there driving, and I'd start looking in the rear view, see if anybody's in the back seat. It kind of freaked me out a little bit. I didn't like it. Then after a while, I just got comfortable. Like, there's so many ghosts that I know, and they're not messing with me. I had a house that had 2 boys living there that were both ghost spirits, John and Vince. And John and Vince liked me a lot. They admitted that they did, because I was a plumber and I worked in there for years. And they didn't reveal themselves until, I was there for like 18 years working in that house. And I said to the owner, after he discovered he had ghosts, I said, well, because he wanted me to come over and fix some pipes. And like, does he like me? Did the kids like me? Like, oh yeah, they love you. You know, because they've been watching you work like little kids walking around the house. One was 14 when he died, the other was 17. And it turned out that they could do phenomenal, crazy, phenomenal things. And the guy who owned the house was a president of a bank. And his wife was very straight kind of woman, you know. And when they told me some of the stories that went on there, because of course they told me because they had heard my story. And then I got involved in the ghost. And then the ghost got involved with me. And it was weird what happened. You know, there was a woman, Demetra, who was Greek. And the Greeks really, the evil eye, the whole evil eye thing. And when she heard there was a ghost in that house, her best friend was the woman, Nancy. When she heard there was a ghost in there, she wouldn't go there. So eventually her friend said to her, Demetra, you know, ghosted, they're gone. Really? And she said, yeah. So she started going to that house. And I was still going there a lot. And I knew that John and Vince were still there. So I was in Demetra's basement, putting in a line for her new refrigerator, ice maker line. So I had to cut a T into a cold water pipe, you know, shut the water, cut the T in, put a ball valve on, shut the ball valve, open the water, make sure there's no leaks. Then I hook up some tubing to the refrigerator. And I'm sitting downstairs and Demetra's telling me how, you know, Nancy told her that John and Vince were gone. They left the house. So I looked at her and I looked around the room because you never know who's listening in the ghost world. I knew that they could hear me, I think. So I leaned into her. I go, Demetra, whatever Nancy's telling you, it's not true. John and Vince still in that house. And the minute I finished that sentence, the valve opened up full and water was shooting everywhere. I jumped up on the ladder, pulled the handle down. Me and Demetra looked at each other. We couldn't believe it. You know, like, you can't even talk. They can hear you. Mm-hmm. You know, it's crazy. That situation got out of control incredibly before it got under control. And I'm not even sure if it's under control. You know, John and Vince, John's favorite number was 17, and his favorite band was Aerosmith. So we shared that. And when I went there to do work, this is crazy. You're going to think I'm nuts, but they like Tootsie Rolls. And I said, they can eat them? Yeah. You put Tootsie Rolls on the table, and before you know it, there's only wrappers. They absorb it. So there's a woman, Katie, from the Woman of Wisdom. She was the medium. She went over to the house, and she did a little ceremony with a thing, the sphere that spins around, you know. And she determined who it was. And then they found an original newspaper guy who vouched for the story, saying, yeah, I remember when the first kid drowned. You know, I covered the story. And they found the grave, and they got pictures of these kids. And it was insanely crazy, some of the stuff they could do, you know. And eventually, like, Demetra had that issue, and then other things started to happen. My wife got burned at home. She took a shower, and the water was too hot. I went down, I'm like, I didn't touch it. And the knob that controls the temperature of the water heater, gas water heater, had been removed. And the little half circle that the knob snaps onto had been turned up to high. And then it was slid on kind of carefully so you couldn't tell. And my wife got burned. I'm like, oh my God, someone fucked around with this. Set it back. A couple of days later, Demetra had a gas leak. Gas company went over there. I had put a stove in for him a few weeks before that, but it wasn't the connection. It was inside this stove that was an older stove. And the gas company said it had nothing to do with your plumber. It's inside a sealed compartment that was leaking gas. And then the third thing that happened, I'm driving around in my truck, and all of a sudden, I was very OCD about my truck, and a can of spray paint flew off a shelf, and it flew around the room like a bumblebee, spraying paint everywhere. And I pulled over real quick, and I had to get a hold of that can. And that's when I realized there's something going on here. And I went to Women of Wisdom to speak to this woman, Katie, who had been to that house. And she told me, she went into this little trance, and she spun around, and she was gone for like 2 minutes, and she came back, and she said, well, here's the deal. Two boys died. The father died long after they did. And he wants them to go over to the other side, but they won't do it because they love being at this house. And he did all these things knowing that you would come to me, and then I could give you advice of what you had to do. I'm like, okay, what do I have to do? Well, you got to go to Mark and tell him that he's got to, have this ceremony to get rid of these spirits, that they have to leave. It's not healthy for them to live in this house with his two daughters. It just wasn't healthy. So, I'm like, how am I going to tell Mark that I had this experience? So one day I'm driving to Walpole. I have one customer in the town of Walpole. And I'm going down this Highland Road and Highland Ave. And I see Mark coming the other way. I'm thinking, what is Mark doing? At like 9 o'clock in the morning, he's supposed to be at the bank. And he's coming back from Walpole. So he sees me, I see him. We both got dark sunglasses on. And we both pull over. We get out of our vehicles. We walk and we look at each other. No one says hello. And I look at him, I go, Mark, I spoke to Katie at Women of Wisdom. There's some issues going on here. You got to get those two boys out of your house. And he just looked at me and he said, okay. And he jumped back in his car and I jumped in my van and drove away. And he claims that he got rid of the ghosts. I don't think he did. Like, I think the ghosts are there. They're living in this house. It's over in Brockton. And I'm telling you, if you met this guy, he's the straightest dude you ever want to meet.
Yeah.
And his wife she was a sweetheart. When I worked there, she was like, hey, Vin, you want some coffee or some tea? She'd make me coffee and tea, bring me a muffin. I'm in the other room, it was cute. Then her little girls at the time would bring in like fake tea kettles and little cups, pour me fake tea. They were a great family. So, they had no reason to make these stories up, and it was like, whoa, crazy house. And it was crazy there on Halloween. Halloween crazy stuff happened. Yeah. John and Vince invited some of their friends, and they had a big party in the house. And they would take candy corn and put it on the dining room table and set it up and write things. And Mark and his wife Nancy would see it, and it's like, But I can report to you right now that other than occasionally, and it used to happen a lot, the radio in my truck would suddenly zoom up to 17 on the volume dial, but only when Aerosmith played. And I knew it was John. And I'd sit there in my van and I'd be like, John's in here. He's fucking around. He wants to hear Aerosmith, And you believe it or not, that's what happened for a long time. And every time it happened, I'm like, I knew they were in the truck. So that's Halloween, man. That's real Halloween. That's spooky stories that are true. And it's up to you to either believe it or not. Trick or treat.
Yeah, I guess that's the best way to end it. And I'll say this as well. I think if you're interested, I think there might be an opportunity here. Maybe we go on a ghost hunt sometime and we record it for content. I think people would like that.
Ooh, that would be a blast.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would.
We'll look into that.
Yeah. So to all your listeners, I do have my blog. It's going to post. So if you want to read that story in its entirety, hopefully it's going to post either Friday night or Saturday morning. And I'll have it out there for the Halloween weekend. You can read it to your kids and spook them out, But
beautiful.
That's my scary stories.
Well, thank you, Vindog. That was captivating for real. So Thanks a lot for jumping on. Thanks for hitting me up. Always hit me up. We're gonna have to start doing this monthly and a monthly story.
You ever see that joke? I saw a joke recently on Facebook where someone said, if you really want to freak someone out, they start talking to you, just look at them and say, you can see me?
I like that. Well, Vindog, thanks again.
All right, Eddie. Always a pleasure, man. I love it.
It always is.
I wish I lived in Chicago, to be honest with you.
I know. Hey, move over here, Vindog.
I was there once. I loved it.
Oh,
I really had a great time.
You got to come visit for sure. We would gladly take you in. It'd be awesome.
I don't know if I want to trade my Red Sox for White Sox, but I do like the Bears.
There you go.
Even though they kicked our ass back in 1985, 86 Super Bowl, I still, that was a great team.
You got the mustache to fit in too, so
that's
nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'll look into that. I'll start talking to some people to try to make that happen.
Let's do it.
Vindog, thanks again. Thanks everybody for listening. Right. That's it for today. We'll see you tomorrow.